How you doing and welcome back. Are you unhappy as a truck driver or your current position? Well, there's many reasons for that, and that's what we're going to go over today. Now, after 10 years as a truck driver, I create educational trucking videos from new truck driving all the way to owner operating, so please consider subscribing. But in this video, I'm going to go over some of the reasons why people, quit truck driving. And the point of this is to get you to think about your situation and see if maybe you just need a slight tweak or if you need a radical change like changing companies or even quitting the industry as a whole. So stick around. Now, before we get into this video, just really quickly, I want to say I'm not advocating you to quit your job. So many people take things so literally from some random person on the internet, and that is not what this video is all about. The point of this video is to get you to think. Don't just run out and quit your job just because I said so. There's so many different things that you can do before taking that drastic measure, and then we're going to talk about some of those reasons right now. So one of the first reasons people quit is micromanagement. Now, I don't know about you, but one of the things that I loved about being a truck driver was the open road. I loved not being in a cubicle, in an office, staring out the same window, looking at Bob, who's so unhappy every day, and Susan, who just can't stop eating donuts every day. But that micromanagement can seriously get on your nerves. From geolocations, check calls on your ELD, emails, phone calls. Holy cow, phone calls. There is nothing more that made my blood boil when a load that I was pulling required me to use a geo-tracking app, and then the broker would call me every single day for a checkup. It's like, why don't you just check the app? The micromanagement can certainly get on your nerves. And if that's something that's bothering you and causing you to road rage while you're out there, maybe consider talking to your dispatcher or not taking loads that require the geo tracking. Now, this is something that's not necessarily going to be drastic enough for you to just quit the trucking industry. You might just want to stop running high value loads, or you might want to just change companies, something along those lines, maybe even change dispatchers if your dispatcher won't leave you alone. But not necessarily drastic enough to leave the trucking industry, but certainly something to consider. Now, number two is truck drivers are seriously taken advantage of. And what do I mean by that? I mean, how about the pay to park everywhere you go? Truck parking is a serious issue out there. There's not enough places to park, and especially once you get into certain parts of the country. Try parking in Los Angeles. I dare you. One of the other things, talking about truck stops, how about the pricing in truck stops? It's ridiculous. They know that we can't really go anywhere else. If you compare pricing, I remember buying a Subway, the line was too long, and I happened to just notice the price. There happened to be a Subway across the street. I ran across the street, paid for my sub, and it was cheap, and it was noticeably cheap. I saved like $3 walking across the street. So truck stops definitely take advantage of truck drivers. How about DPF systems? How about, those being required? I mean, don't even get me started. But the sad thing is these DPF systems being required, well, we're seeing the same thing. We're just in the very early phases of it. Guess what? Electric trucks are coming. That's going to be a requirement at some point too. So very sadly, truck drivers are very much taken advantage of. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. Now, number three would be the wrong expectations. And this is going to start way back into the recruiting process, like dealing with the recruiters. Now, I just made a video talking about how to ask the right questions, and I'll link that down in the top comments down below. But the wrong expectations that are given to you when you start, if those aren't being met, well, that's going to be extremely frustrating and probably going to cause you to quit trucking in general. The recruiter's job, and I talked about this, their only job is to put a butt in an empty seat. That's it. They don't care who you are. They don't care what your needs are. Some do, but as a whole, you know, they don't care. They just want to get you in that truck. They will tell you almost anything to put you there. There are good recruiters out there. I'm not saying this, that they're all bad, but if you don't ask the right questions during the recruiting process, your expectations are probably going to be very high. And when you go to that company, unfortunately, you're not going to see what you felt like was promised to you. And it's probably going to cause you to quit trucking in general. So if you arm yourself with the right knowledge before you start trucking, before you go to that company, then it may be better, in the long run, because you won't feel let down. Now, and one other thing to keep in mind is trucking is a lifestyle. It's not just a job. And that leads me straight into number 4, which would be there is a huge lack of respect in the trucking industry. And this starts all the way from, the recruitment process, all the way up to the top, the CEOs, all the way back down to four-wheelers that are on the road. There is a lack of respect for truck drivers across the board. And I know that this used to bother me for sure. Example of this would be like the owner of the truck and whoever that may be, or the person that you deal with, like a dispatcher, not listening to you. If you hear something that's going on, or you feel that truck is driving differently or running differently, and they're telling you to just keep going, just keep driving, and then it winds up breaking on you. Well, that's extremely frustrating. But a lot of times the owners or the company or your dispatchers just won't listen to you. And to me, that's a lack of respect as well. And another place that we get a lack of respect is law enforcement. Now, not all law enforcement are bad. However, nothing used to frustrate me more than getting that light, pulling into a scale, pulling up there, running across the scale and looking over at the chicken coop and seeing nobody inside. Holy cow, that used to make my blood absolutely boil. And to me, that's a lack of respect. The number 5 reason you might quit trucking would be that truck drivers are underpaid. Starting from the brokers. If you deal with brokers, everybody that deals with brokers understands that brokers are extremely greedy. I don't know if you've ever ran a TQL load or if you've watched a TQL load, but I think, and this is just my opinion, they will not start to increase that rate unless that load has sat on the load board for X amount of hours. So the longer the time that load sits on that load board, the more they would be willing to give up. Now, why is it even that way? We're talking about some serious disparity here in what the actual business is paying to have their goods transported versus what these middlemen are keeping. And quite frankly, it's not fair. Or how about the fact that pay does not reflect inflation? That's just absurd. Back in the day, back when diesel was less than $1, trucking rates were nearly the same. How are you telling me decades later that we shouldn't be making more money? That's just absolutely asinine to me. We should be making way more. Or how about the fact that it's just a dangerous job? Truck driving shows up on the top 10 most dangerous jobs often, almost every year. So, the fact that it's so dangerous should reflect the pay, but it doesn't. It really doesn't. It should be attractive to the younger folks that are coming in that want to be truck drivers, that don't want to go to school, that don't want to sit in a cubicle. It should be attractive for them to want to come out here, but it's not. And there is one of the reasons for the truck driver shortage. Has nothing to do with the retirement of the other truck drivers. Politicians or something else. Now, another reason that you might consider quitting, or maybe just you might want to move jobs, would be poor equipment. The more you're breaking down, the less money you're making. Wow, that's a massive revelation. If you're the owner-operator, you own the truck, I should say. Yeah, nothing you can do about it. You just got to get it fixed and you got to move on. But if you're running for someone else and your truck keeps breaking down, that's awful because they're messing with your money and your ability to put food on the table. And if they can't take care of the truck, why should you try to take care of them? Even if you're driving, a less than stellar truck and you've had a long day and you pull into that truck stop and you get that last parking spot, do you really want to back in next to two fully chromed out, badass looking large cars? I think not. Now, despite the aesthetics, I get it. You don't necessarily need, an awesome looking truck, but it is nice to have a clean truck that doesn't break down and, it looks good. I mean, that's your house on wheels and it should be treated like that. Or how about if you don't have the right tool for the job? I mean, if your truck is not powerful enough to pull heavy loads and they're trying to send you with heavy loads, up and down 8% grades, well, that's frustrating. So, having the right equipment is definitely frustrating and can certainly cause people to quit truck driving. Might be time to find a different company. Now, the last two, these are very important, and these are, of course, pretty obvious. But one of the biggest reasons why people quit is because of the truck driver pay. The pay at the end of the day is going to be one of the most important factors because, they're out there and they're living the trucking lifestyle. And if they're not being paid accordingly, why would they stick around? Why would you stick around? This kind of relates to basically the recruiting process as well. If they overpromised, but yet they're under delivering, well, that's extremely frustrating, because that is a direct correlation with your pay. And if they can't give you enough money that they told you that they were going to get you, well, that's not fair. That's frustrating. That causes a lot of issues because you're going into that job expecting to make certain money. Now, this can also relate to a lack of understanding of the market. If you don't understand the market and what's going on, how much freight is out there, how it's paying, and then you don't have a good understanding, a good grasp of the trucking industry as a whole. And then number one, you shouldn't be buying a truck. But number two, that can affect your money as well. If there simply aren't enough loads to go around, that's directly going to cause you to have less miles. So if you better understand what the market is doing, then you can be prepared for, the next weeks, months to come and be ahead of it. And that way, what's going on, why you're going to have lower pay. And, maybe that helps you get through. Maybe that helps you, get out before it's too late. But understanding the market will certainly give you a better idea of maybe why you're not being paid as much. And if it's any of those other reasons that I mentioned, move on. Now, the last one, and this to me was the most important. This is why I now create trucking videos on YouTube. That's going to be home time. Home time is so critical. I'm personally not the guy that can stay out for 8 months straight and then take 4 months off. There are a lot of people that do that. There are a lot of people that don't take any time off. There are a lot of people that hardly work. Go check out Sammy Makes Sense. Just kidding. But the home time is huge. And if you're not getting enough home time, if you're not getting enough time out of that truck, away from it, not having to think about it whatsoever, and being able to spend time with your loved ones, then why are you doing it? That's frustrating. That is probably, in my opinion, the number one cause of why people, quit the trucking industry. And they may give it a shot, but they quit super early. Home time is everything. If a lot of people have families out here, and sure, it's great to be able to provide for them, but if they're always absent, then what's the point? If they're always missing important dates and they're not able to get home, if your company is not able to get you home for some of the holidays, understand you're going to have to work some of them, maybe for some birthdays. Or if you say that you absolutely need to be home on the 16th and they tell you they're going to get you there and then they don't, You know, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. I don't care what it is. If your truck broke down, I do not care what the reason is. If you tell them that there's a massively important date that you need to be home for, and they're like, oh, sorry, we can't get you there, that's unexcusable, period. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, ring that notification bell so you know when the next video is coming out. But as always, stay driven.